This is the Forgotten John Madden Football game. Madden on the TurboGrafx CD is pretty rare and really obscure, but the gameplay is solid. And the controls are fantastic. In my opinion, this is the best version of the early Madden games that's out there. In fact, it's a lot better than the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo versions. But it's also really obscure. Ever wonder why? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back and look at the TurboGrafx, the system that everyone's forgotten about. The story goes back to 1985 when the Famicom was dominant in the video game market over in Japan. Hudson Soft, which is a company you've probably heard of, approached Nintendo with an idea. You see, Hudson Soft had made these so-called B cards as a cheaper way of selling games on the old MSX computers. They thought that Nintendo should come up with a similar system. Instead, Nintendo went with floppy disks for the famous Famicom disk system. And so Hudson Soft partnered together with a company called NEC, which made computers that looked like this. The result was what they called the PC Engine, a console that looked like this. And that became the TurboGrafx. They changed the name after market research indicated that people in North America didn't really like the name PC Engine. Technically, the system was called the TurboGrafx 16. The 16 was for 16-bit. However, the name is misleading. There were two 16-bit graphics processors. There was this 6270 right here, and there was this 6260 right here. However, the CPU, the 6280 chip, was 8-bit, not 16-bit. Of course, the 8-bit versus 16-bit argument is really mostly just theoretical. I mean, this is the sort of thing that we used to argue about on the playground at school back when we didn't really know what we were talking about. The thing is that the TurboGrafx was a lot faster than the Famicom, and the games looked a lot better. Unlike the other consoles, PC Engine and TurboGrafx games came on these cards, which were called Who cards. They're similar to that B card thing that Hudson Soft had made earlier. The games came in these jewel cases, but of course they weren't CDs. Now the graphics really were impressive for the late 1980s, as you can see here. This is Pro-Yaku World Stadium and is basically a port of the original RBI baseball, but released only in Japan. Compare it to the Famicom version, the original, and it's like night and day. Now, the PC Engine was also the first system to come out with a CD-ROM add-on, and the popularity of that CD-ROM add-on is why Sega decided to do the exact same thing a couple years later. This is the PC Engine CD, which came out sometime in December 1988 in Japan. If I understand right, you had to use one of these interface units to connect the CD to the PC Engine console. Stick them together and you get something that looks like this. It's basically the same setup that Sega used for the Sega CD. And anyway, that's where the TurboGrafx CD comes from. But you know, the part I really don't understand is why EA decided to release its flagship football game on this system. The truth is that TurboGrafx was not popular in North America, largely because there weren't many games for it. And the CD add-on, which retailed at about $300 new, was even less popular. Sticking the two together left you with this, not exactly the most aesthetically pleasing system in the world. Compare that to how the Japanese version looked. Anyway, you could always have gone for the Turbo Duo instead, which combined both the card system and the CD add-on in one and looked a lot nicer. That Turbo Duo system retailed for $300 brand new in October 1992, which actually wasn't that bad. But as you can see in this section from the same article, there were practically no games for the system. And you know, that's what killed the TurboGrafx in North America in the end. Now, Madden is only one of about 50 CD games that came out for the system in North America, US, and Canada. That's opposed to over 300 CD games alone that came out in Japan. Now, the card games, there were maybe a little bit more that came out both in North America and in Japan, but even when it comes to the card games, the amount that we had over here was a lot fewer than they had in Japan. It's really, really hard to get people interested in your system without, you know, releasing games for it. But that's a shame, since this really is a good version of Madden. Now the first time you play it, the controls will feel really awkward. You see, Madden was originally designed for the Sega Genesis, which had 3-button controllers, but the TurboGrafx controller only had 2 buttons. Look here at this play calling screen. You can see that there's a choice for 1, 2, or R. R stands for the run button on the controller, what most other systems would call the start button. And you use the run button in game even when you throw passes. Now, it's actually not a bad system, even though it takes a little while to get used to. I mean, it's sort of like if you play NBA Jam on the Game Gear, where the start button works for Turbo. It's not ideal, but they had to do something to make up for the missing button. Anyway, I screwed it up when I played my first game and wound up accidentally calling for a field goal deep in my own territory. The 100-yard field goal was nowhere close, unfortunately. But I learned the controls soon afterwards, and then everything was fine. Now, the best part of this game is the passing system. You see, this was released a few months before Madden 94 came out, but also a couple months after Bill Walsh College Football came out. And this game marked the end of that stupid passing window thing they had in the earlier games. The old Genesis and Super NES Madden games used this passing window concept. Honestly, it really doesn't work that well. The biggest problem is that you can't see if you're going to get sacked when you're trying to see who's open. On the TurboGrafx, you see your players go into their patterns right after you snap the ball.
Interception.
It's a lot easier to see who to pass to. And then you have the cutscenes. They're really something. I'm not sure I understand why, but most of these early CD-ROM games have what they called full motion video. It's awkward and unintentionally hilarious.
Delay of game.
It's cool that the technology allowed them to do this, I suppose. But it must have been really embarrassing, especially at the time. I mean, this just looks really low budget.
Touchdown.
But you know, even with that problem, this is a great version of Madden 93. And it really is Madden 93 under the hood, by the way, not Madden 94. You've got the same bonus teams that you've got with Madden 93, for example. And there's no actual regular season mode, you just play one game at a time. Defense is pretty easy and works the same as in Madden 93. Passing is a lot easier, like I mentioned. Running also seems to work better. However, this game still has the normal Madden Football issues with blocking, and these are problems that Madden Football still has with blocking today. Okay, so we're calling a run to the fullback out of the shotgun. Now, if you look closely at the play call, you can see that everybody is basically moving back for pass blocking, likely to trick the defense. Now let's look at this right after the snap. The offensive line is running to the right and left, which really isn't the play call. The defense is just standing there. And after I pitch the ball out, the defense has basically run away from the line. There's nobody to block. The result is an 11-yard gain and an easy first down. But if you look at this running play instead, you'll notice that there is no blocking even when there is engagement on the line. After the pitch out, you can see that the linemen are just sort of standing around. I should have a good lane to the side with these 3 blockers in front of me. However, the blockers kind of walk in circles and nobody gets in front of me at all. So the result is a 7-yard gain, which isn't bad, but the truth is that there's just no blocking in this game. Okay, I've already shown you guys Tecmo Super Bowl in other videos. I know you're familiar with it. I know you want me to shut up about it. It's just that I don't understand why an NES game has actual blocking, but the Madden games on the 16-bit systems don't. Overall, though, this is a really good game, despite what the reviewers said. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it mostly positive reviews. Somebody thought that the play calling screen was confusing, which doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, how is this screen confusing? Somebody else said that the game was a little bit choppy. Now, maybe this is because I'm running an emulator with more memory, but this doesn't look choppy to me at all. And let me put in a plug really quick. So if you're interested in like reading articles like this or some other content that I found in random places, or watching bonus content, or watching stuff like complete old game broadcasts, you really should check out my Patreon page. So for example, I've amassed a large selection of old gaming magazines with articles that might be helpful for you. I've also got a whole bunch of old football publications, books, stuff like that. Now, I know you guys don't have a ton of time to read everything, and so I'm planning on publishing the best of what I can find for Patreon subscribers. And of course, sending money to the channel is a great way to support the channel. So anyway, check out the link in the video description. But the biggest problem with this game is not that it didn't get a perfect score. No, it's that most of the magazines ignored it. GamePro, for example, simply did not review the game, or if it did, I can't find the review anywhere. Now, there was an advertisement for the game in the magazine, so it's not like GamePro didn't know that it was there. And notice that there was no mention of an ambulance anywhere in the ad, but there was just simply no review. In fact, if you look closely, you'll realize that no TurboGrafx games were reviewed at all, at least in this issue. There was a review in the same issue for the Super Nintendo and Genesis versions of Madden 94. And look at this, they don't even mention the Turbo CD version of the game when they talk about the 16-bit options. Now, I don't think that the lack of media attention was because of some sort of conspiracy. Actually, I think what happened is that the media in general lost patience with the TurboGrafx because there were so few games for it. And as a result, by the way, this game that didn't sell very well is rare and really hard to find. The only sold listing I could find on eBay went for $100, and the seller didn't even show if the disc was scratched or not. Anyway, be on the lookout for this one when you go through your flea markets and your yard sales. It's rare and it's worth quite a bit of money if you can find it. But the most important thing is that this really is the best version of the early Madden games that's out there. Now, I do think that Madden 94 was likely a little bit better, though we'll see when we play that. And I know that Madden 95 is better. I played that a lot as a kid. But if you really like that old school classic Madden feeling, the Turbo CD version is the one that you really want to get. It just looks better, it sounds better, and it feels better than both the Genesis and Super Nintendo versions.